If you want to go ahead, Rob.
Welcome to the Scenic and Historic Preservation Committee meeting dated February 22nd, 4 p.m. Robert Clark. Our committee members, Phil Sabara, Marnie Williams, and Vicky Arcuri are also on the call, as well as various city personnel as well. We're going to open case number 01-21. 265 Genesee Street is the property. The applicants are Matthew Mayer, Becky Carlson St. Clair, and the owner of the property is the Utica Parking Authority. They are looking with the City of Utica and Art Space Projects Inc. have entered into a developmental agreement to convert the northern Genesee Street side half-acre portion of the existing parking lot adjacent to the Stanley Theater into an affordable housing apartment mixed-use development. The applicant has proposed to construct a 4-story, 40,000 square foot mixed-use building. It will contain 40 living units consisting of 13 studios, 21 single bedroom, and 6 2-bedroom apartments. Approximately 1,500 gross square feet of leasable commercial space will be included on the ground level floor, along with building entry, lobby, and community use spaces. The ground floor apartments will be located at the rear of the property. This project is being funded by New York State Homes and Community Renewal. The existing curb cut at Genesee Street will be utilized for a one-way entrance into the lot, driving underneath the 4-story building to access the parking behind. Approximately 33 parking spaces within the building footprint and landscape perimeter will be displaced. Building identity signage will be anticipated, as well as commercial tenant signage. The ground floor will be clad with a combination of exterior insulation finish system, possibly with metal panel and cement board accents. The applicant has stated that the project conveys an urban building form suitable for a main street with masonry and storefront on ground floors and cornice separating public commercial ground floors from more private residential upper floors. The applicant has given special thought to facade treatments on the eastern side of the facade in order to transition the adjacent Stanley Theater facade style. Signage is minimal to include building identity, wayfinding, and commercial tenancies names. A future public art mural is desired on the eastern facade. This time with the, and then a landscaping plan has been submitted to include, but not limited to, Gold Coast junipers, compact American cranberry, blue ridge junipers, pot rush grass, etc. On the site. This plan will also require planning board review and approval. Would the applicant at this time like to add additional information regarding the project?
Yeah, hi, I'm Becky Carlson, St. Clair Art Space. Yeah, I just give a little bit of background, just real brief, just on Art Space, just so you understand kind of our projects a little bit. And then as we kind of get more into the project, Matt can kind of talk more about the project itself. But if you're not familiar with us, we're a national nonprofit developer. We have a mission to create, foster, and preserve affordable and sustainable space for artists and arts organizations. We own and operate more than 40 buildings in 22 states. We have 3 in New York State, 1 in Buffalo, 1 in Patchogue, and 1 in East Harlem. And that we were invited to Utica by a group of leaders that wanted to see an art space Utica as well. And just that our project will represent a $12.5 million investment in downtown Utica.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Meyer. Can you hear me okay with my headphones?
Yep, we can hear
you. Okay, cool. I'm one of the managing partners over at HHL Architects in Buffalo, New York. City, obviously, pretty similar to Utica and some of our other New York State partner cities. We've worked with Art Space for probably 15 years now, doing some of these buildings. We did one here in Buffalo, and we did the others in New York State for them, as well as some projects in Texas, and currently we're doing a couple in Colorado for them. This is, we think, a great opportunity to do some things that many of our communities are trying to do, which is revitalize our main streets. Genesee Street continues here to Buffalo, and in Genesee and Main Street in Buffalo, we've been working for many years to replenish the buildings that once were taken down to create parking lots. So as much as parking is necessary and desirable in our urban centers, the Walkable Communities is an initiative that started a couple of years ago to kind of recreate that public realm space in our downtown areas. And we think this is a great opportunity to not only introduce some affordable housing, bring some creative people to the downtown area right next door to the Stanley Theater, and also, recreate some of the nice urban wall that maybe once existed, if not at this site, because I think maybe this site might have had some setback buildings for a long time, but really do some things to build on what the Stanley and some of the other revitalized buildings in downtown Utica are doing. We did, as was described in our narrative, we did try to take some special attention looking at the context of this site when we were planning the building. We did look at buildings that were set back. We looked at some building footprints that were running parallel to the side lots, so the frontage wasn't as deep. And we landed on this configuration where we have a 200-foot wide facade. It actually did a couple of things for us. One, we thought it presented the building the best to the street, which art space projects like to present themselves to an urban street. They like to have an active frontage, an active sidewalk, and an engagement with the community. And it also did what we think was the sort of the least damage to the parking, if you will. I know parking is really sensitive to a lot of people. I know historic commissions, we do a lot of work with preservation projects, and historic commissions have done them all across the country. And we know that there's sort of a push me, pull you problem with parking and historic preservation and urban renewal. And so we thought that this ended up with what we felt was a pretty good compromise of getting a nice new building that would create some public realm down on the sidewalk, create some storefront opportunities, some transparency into the entry and community space and lobby space for art space, as well as some leasable space, but also retain some of the public parking assets, the familiarity with how people would enter the public parking when they come and visit the Stanley and other places downtown. By driving under the building and parking in the back. We tried to minimize the impact to the existing parking configuration. We basically took the existing handicap spaces that right now are up against the sidewalk and just slid them back to behind the building, and then modified the flow a little bit so that it is only an entry, as was stated. It's an entrance only, whereas currently you can drive in and out onto Genesee. But we feel, based on some traffic analysis that we've done, that this flow works nicely to enter the site, not only for the people who are coming to the art space building, but for those who just want to come to the parking lot or maybe go patronize the Stanley or the other surrounding properties, and easily get back out onto King and adjacent streets as you can do today. Going back to the rendering, one thing I would say that we did look at, and there is a, I don't know if you have the neighborhood context.
Just one second. Just let me know what photo you want me to show.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to do it.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. I'm sorry. I'm just seeing Brian there. I know your name's not Brian. I want to make
Patty, sorry.
Patty. If you have that neighborhood context map that was included in the package that we sent, that had some aerial photos and some surrounding photos. I think it was site map, it might have been called. Yeah,
Yep.
there you go.
That one's correct.
So, yeah, that's a good one. So I know you all are quite familiar with the neighborhood down here, but one of the things that we noticed, and you know, we've been around for 50 years doing new buildings and doing adaptive reuse and preservation projects with existing buildings. And so it's important to think about the impact of the neighborhood and the context when we design a building. And there's, as you can tell somewhat from this photo, these collection of photos, you know, there's a pretty common pattern of buff colored materials, whether they be stone or whether they be stucco or metal or brick. And red brick, of course, is pretty common around there, and a little bit of gray material. So we, you know, entertained a variety of materials when we were initially designing the facade of this building, and thought that, you know, one, we could make it stand out. We've designed art spaces that do make quite a statement. You know, sometimes it makes sense to do a building for art space that sort of blends into the community, and there are other opportunities for the use or other components of the project to make a statement to the community that they're present. So if you, Patty, jump back to that one of the two renderings, doesn't matter which one. We took a look at the color palette for the facade here, and thought that if we picked our base materials as being the buff and sort of brownish or red brick materials for the buildings, that we could still make a unique identity for this project, but also make something that fit into the context of the neighborhood. We weren't going to try to build a building that looks like it was there 100 years ago, but we wanted it to feel like it fit into the neighborhood. And so we're going to be looking at some gray materials for certain accents, potentially considering them as maybe they're metal, you know, like a corrugated metal or a metal panel of some sort, or a bronze material. We're looking at the storefronts to be a darker colored material, and even the windows to be a darker colored material. And a splash of color, as you saw in that green, maybe that's, you know, the marker for the main entrance into the ground floor entry for the art space proper. The other thing, I'll have you flip back to that rendering, but stay on this one for the moment. One thing that the narrative said, and I just want to make sure that you all know what we're trying to do here, is that the four-story building is permitted by the current Utica zoning, and we did present last week to the planning board. They have accepted lead agency status, and they're starting their formal review. But we thought that it was sort of appropriate, if not suitable, to provide some kind of a scale homage to the Stanley and the various additions and protrusions that occur on that large building. And so what we did, even though we have a four-story building for the full width of the 200 feet of the site, we took the facade and essentially split it into two components, so that it maybe has the sense of reading as either two buildings or maybe one building that has an addition to it. Because that's sort of the genesis of a lot of building infills that occur along main streets, like in Genesee Street here in downtown Utica. And the other thing that we did was the eastern side here, where you can see this buff color. We took the fourth story and changed it to a darker gray material, thinking a little bit the way that the building of the Stanley emerges from, you know, the front two-story facade, and how it works backwards to, you know, getting into the main hall and the fly stage areas of the actual theater. And thought that, you know, maybe we could find a way to have the scale of the building feel like it's evolving into this adjacent four-story brick look building in the red color brick, where is predominantly the entrance and the community space and the lobby and the drive-through for the parking. And so we spent a little time going back and forth and looking at the size of the windows and the pattern of the windows, and how we want to accentuate the facade as being a downtown building and not a conventional, residential structure. We only really need small windows, technically speaking, to comply with HCR's requirements for our apartments on the upper floors. But ArtSpace likes to design their apartments almost like a commercial space where there's tall windows, wide windows, big spaces to not only evoke a different facade, but also to provide a lot of daylight into their spaces. They're hopeful that they're going to engage, artists, photographers, writers, musicians, whatever from the community there who like that kind of living and working environment. And we found that those big patterns of windows really help evoke that interesting spirit. And we think the north light is actually really favorable. We do have a mirror of these apartments on the south facade. The building footprint is basically a single corridor splitting the long side. So we just spent a lot of time really thinking through what it's going to look like from the back when you're parked there and you're patronizing Stanley and coming down the Memorial Walk, or if you're just using it on a daily basis and you're going to park there and walk across the street, you can cut through underneath where you drove in on a sidewalk. The tenants can park there and feel like they're entering respectfully to the back of the building. We're going to try to have some treatments on the back entry, which connects right through to the lobby and right out through to the sidewalk on Genesee. And we've also had some unique challenges here, thinking about how we transition the building down to the one story, the size of the tire store on the far west side, and how we sort of respectfully think about the massing of the building. But also we have some limitations that we have to think about in terms of the building complying with HCR's, not only their design standards, but some of their financial standards. They really put some limitations on how much, what the prices of these units can cost for rent. So we try to be a little creative, and that's why we describe that on some of these upper floors, we're going to have to get a little creative, whether it's metal panels, whether it's fiber cement panel materials, or whether it's a stucco, like an EPIS stucco material. We're going to have to consider some of those materials just so that we can make the cost feasible to actually build this building and get it funded through HCR and have it be affordable for the tenants that will use it. I did not include in the package, and I don't know if it would be helpful for me to show you this, but the ground floor plan, it's important to note that as you're looking at this elevation right here, the ground floor that you see along the street is intended to be all storefront. The storefront that you see in the buff colored is a leasable storefront. That means ArtSpace could rent it out to some local merchants or cafes, or maybe other people who are interested in being in this ArtSpace building can rent the space there in those two tenant spaces right now that we've configured. And then the storefronts you see on the brown or buff colored brick is actually the main community room and entrance lobby for ArtSpace. So when the residents of this building are having parties or having open houses or doing some kind of art crawl, as ArtSpace likes to call them, where they open the doors and they have art shows and different activities, that community space that you see right there is going to help activate the sidewalk. You do have a unique circumstance here where it's pretty steeply sloping from the Memorial Walk up to the driveway. So we're trying to also keep the topography of the site pretty much as it is. So that's where you can tell that the doors into the retail space, the tenant spaces on the left, are stepping down, and we've actually lowered the floors there on the ground floor. But there are not really doors entering those windows into the community space. You come in where that darker black window is. Just so you know that this is a rendering issue with those elevations. those front doors are not intended to be black. The storefront is all going to be similar. The glass is all going to be similar, so that you're not going to necessarily see those black squares on there. Yeah, go to the other rendering too. Yeah, that one. So it does read black because when we render the glass, it has a tendency to look black. But those black areas are actually all glass, intended to be transparent glass for storefronts. Stay on this for a second, because the one thing I do want to explain is we have developed some concept ideas of potential public art murals. We work with ArtSpace in this early stage to find opportunities for public art on their projects. Sometimes it's sculpture courtyards, sometimes it's murals, sometimes it's things on decks and rooftops and things like that. So in this particular case, we really saw that there was an opportunity to take something functional that we have to have, which is a big blank exit stair to get the people out of the building on the upper floors down to ground, and make it an opportunity. That's that white shaft you see there on the left-hand side of this rendering. The idea there is that's something that we're hopeful that ArtSpace and the city and the community of Utica will get together and come up with some real cool idea to do a public mural on that three-sided wall, which is our perfunctory exit stair, which we wouldn't normally have windows in anyway. And then it does a couple of things. One, it helps animate the building and help pronounce it and becomes sort of part of the identity of ArtSpace's building in Utica. But it also, in this particular case, really becomes an iconic anchor for the Memorial Garden and the Stanley next door to really pronounce the, for the theater district, if you will, of Genesee Street here. And obviously, if ArtSpace is successful in getting some creative people to move in, it becomes not only a place to go for public entertainment, but have a lot of performers and artisans living here as well. So we think it really gives the opportunity for some creativity after the fact. We've learned through the years of working with ArtSpace that architects like to fully design everything and figure it all out. And we've learned over the years that we have to let go sometimes and just let the nature of the beast work itself out in a building that wants to work somewhat homogeneously with the community of the street and of the city. So we think it's a great opportunity. We're very privileged to be part of it and to help make this happen. ArtSpace is hoping to make an application to New York State HCR in this next round, which we believe is going to be in June. And having an application made with planning board approval and scenic and historic approval really helps make the application a little bit more successful for ArtSpace. So that's all I have to say for right now, I think.
Thank you. Phil, any architectural issues that you see?
No, I really appreciate, how you were sympathetic to the, surrounding buildings in the neighborhood. Really appreciate how you broke down the scale of the building block through forms, textures, colors, things of that nature. So I mean, I think architecturally, there's nothing on my end, that I see as any issues or, historically, I mean, it's a new building, so it is what it is. And again, like Matthew said, you don't want to try and replicate old buildings with something new. I think, I've got an opinion about that. I do appreciate the way it was cited as well. I think far too many times, at least in my lifetime in the city of Utica, we've seen the streetscapes and the fabric of the city broken down. I think here's an opportunity to build it back, and where better than on Genesee Street. So I appreciate the way the building was cited as well. So, I mean, the biggest questions I have at this point would be, it sounds like you haven't finalized, but you have a good idea of materials and colors. So that would be my biggest thing. I'd just like to see maybe final samples of some of the color selections and the materials that are finalized on. Signage obviously is always an issue. We probably want to see what the final signage would be when that goes on. I don't think that's a game changer at this point in time. And the mural as well. I think it's a great idea, but I think it's something that we would need to see and have our group at least give our 2 cents on that before that would be approved. But all in all, I think it's a pretty nice looking project, and I think it would be a great addition to Genesee Street.
Marnie or Vicky, do you have any questions?
Okay. I just like for the building itself and where the plot is, where they're going to place the building. So that whole parking lot, will that be dedicated just for the people who live right in that establishment? You know, the building there. So the parking in the back, that would be basically for those who are living there.
I can answer that. So, you know, as you can see where our boundary is on the site plan there. So that would be the land that we would own. The remaining below the dotted line there, the city would still own. So we wouldn't own any of that parking lot. That would still be with the city. We would require a certain amount of spaces that we're anticipating about 44 spaces for our property. But that would be with a shared use agreement with the city. So it would be within that area, but it's not specifically all the spaces being taken for our building. We would just need spaces within that parking lot, and then there's a parking lot below King Street. And then additionally, I know that the city has plans to develop the area behind there that's undeveloped. You know, there's the 2 parking lots, and then there's the space behind there. And it was shared with us that there's plans for that, and that the with that development and then our development, there still would be a net add of about 4 spaces. So so there would be our use within there, but not specifically in that full front lot.
Okay.
Well,
So basically, like, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna. So basically, the parking space is the lot there. Like for many people would always park there for the Stanley.
Mhm.
So obviously that will be pretty much gone, I would say.
No,
So
that's not true.
Oh, no,
Is it-
Marty. As you'll see on the diagram that's now, you can see the footprint of what their property is going to be, and then the rest of that is still going to remain city parking lot.
okay.
And then the further parking lot beyond that is going to be developed to add additional spaces, city spaces.
Oh, okay. All right. No, I was just curious because I was a little confused on how much,
Yeah, you can see right there where the property line is. You can see right here is the property line.
Yeah. Okay.
So anything beyond this is going to
Beyond
remain city parking.
Okay. I gotcha. Okay.
Patty, do you know offhand what the zoning requirement is? It 1.5 spots per unit?
It's 1.
I apologize. We just adopted our new zoning ordinance. I would have to.
Yeah,
We're not using the per Chris's instructions. We're not using the new zoning, the new draft zoning. We're using the old or current one, however you want to describe it. So it's 1 per, and then 1 per 1,000 for the commercial. That's how we came up with the 44 space requirement.
Which the new zoning is most likely less than that.
That's correct. Yeah, the new zoning was less than, and we were starting to craft it that way. And Chris advised us that we should take the sort of the worst case scenario, because the draft zoning, at least when I talked to Chris last week, wasn't quite adopted yet. So
it is adopted now, but like I said, the new zoning is less restrictive. So there's probably a requirement of less parking. So they're above and beyond what they need.
Okay, thank you.
Vicki, do you have?
The presentation was very good. It was excellent.
I have a simpler question. I guess it was cleared up just because I was concerned about how many units opposed to how many parking spaces they had available to their facility. So it's cleared up. Thank you.
I've got a comment. Bob Hines here.
Bob, I
Oh.
apologize. This isn't a public hearing, so you can't comment at this time.
Vote for it, guys. It's a good thing.
Sorry.
It was, can I just respond to one of the comments? There was something that was alluded to about signage. We have suggested building identity signage on the front of the building and tenant signage. We're, in our experience, we normally will do a follow-up in terms of the formal signage application. We're not quite ready to submit, for actual signage approval just yet. But that is the extent of the sign. We will obviously want to come up with a method for the public parking signage. We use that big green P as sort of an international symbol. But, if it needs to be, a rectangular sign that says, City of Utica parking or something like that, we're prepared to work that out with the city. I think Becky alluded to the point that the city and ArtSpace have not formalized the shared use agreement just yet. There's a sort of a handshake that it will be worked out. So I would imagine whatever the formal agreement that comes out of this for the shared use, that'll also include, what is the proper identity for parking and, whatever permits are needed for that signage to go on this building or adjacent to the building to identify that parking will follow through the proper permitting cycle.
Matthew, I see you're showing some of the period lights, along the sidewalk. What is your intent for, is there any site or building lighting intended or planned?
Not really. And if that period lighting is inaccurate from what exists today, we apologize. We don't really intend to change the sidewalk much at all. We'll undoubtedly have to rebuild it because our building is right up next to the sidewalk, but our intent is to put that sidewalk pretty much back the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
We did not anticipate illuminating the building. That is, something that we always discuss with our communities and with the developer as if they want to do it. Of course, we think there are some opportunities here to do it properly. We want to make sure that the drive-through is really adequately illuminated so that it's safe and so that people can see it. We also want to make sure that the entry to the ArtSpace building primary entrance is illuminated, but we think we can accomplish that with some downlighting. But we're not anticipating, either having lights above shining down or any lights on the building shining up. That wasn't necessarily our intent at this point. That mural view, what we're doing at a project in Ridgeway, Colorado, where we have a similar detail where we have the stair tower functioning as a mural wall. What we've done is we've taken right up at the roof line of it and put sort of like marquee lighting that shines down the building, almost like a billboard light that would shine down. And we would consider something like that if that's necessary or desired to illuminate the mural. Or it could just, receive whatever the ambient light is in the area and not be illuminated. So I think we're good, and I believe ArtSpace would be good either way.
Okay.
Do any other members have any additional questions to ask?
No.
not, would someone like to make it a motion to approve the project of the building as presented? And we will omit signage for a later date.
What about final materials and colors?
Is that a question for me?
I guess, Rob, what do you think? Should we, approve it?
You can put a
Contingent
condition
on-
on receiving the samples. I mean, we're in the process of selecting materials and pricing the project, so we're not quite there yet. We know what our intent is, so we'd be happy to supply samples and materials once we, codify exactly what we're using.
And they
So,
can come back anytime during the building process with colors and materials.
Right.
Or I was
That
thinking,
prohibits from getting a building permit.
or Phil, I was thinking we would approve it based on what we're physically looking. But
Yeah, contingent upon approval of final materials, or something like that.
So signage, colors and materials, and mural
Yes,
will back for final?
yes.
Okay. Does anybody want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion to approve based on what we just said.
Okay.
To come back with final materials, signage, and whatever the mural is.
Okay. Second?
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
You're all set.
motion carried.
They will be required to go back before the planning board for final site plan approval.
Right, yeah, we're doing that next week, right? Or next
Yep.
month, I'm sorry.
Perfect. All right, good luck, everyone.
Thank you, nice job.
It was a pleasure to virtually meet
Night.
you all.
Eddie, anything else we have, or that's it?
No, that's it for tonight.
All right.
Okay.
All right, good
All
night.
right.
All
Bye,
right.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
See you soon.
Bye.
Take care.
Aye.